it's happening. It's not happening.
Yes.
No.
Yes. Barry Builds is back. Season 2.
But I'm not building. I
No,
need
you're
to
not
build.
I've got plenty of stuff for you to build.
Show me.
I'm going to show you in the episode. But today's episode, before you get carried away with yourself and building, it's all about water quality, EC, pH, dissolved oxygen, water temperatures, everything you need to know about your water. So as a grower, you're going to know what comes out of your tap. Is it hard water or is it soft water? Now, the map on my left is a map of the UK. And what you'll notice is there's different rock types all around the UK. Down in the south, like the cliffs of Dover, we have real chalky rocks. Up in Scotland, we get really soft water, it's granite. And the reason that you get hard water is when rainwater, which is slightly acidic, will dissolve the limestone, and it's calcium carbonate. So when it dissolves, it leaches calcium into the water, and therefore you get high amounts of calcium in your taps. Up in Scotland, granite is really, really tough, doesn't dissolve much. So the water there is very soft. Now, soft waters for growers is anything between 0 on an EC scale, from 0 to 0.4. Hard water is 0.5 and upwards. For the more scientific, hard water is anything above 181 milligrams of calcium in your tap water, and anything below 61 milligrams is classed as soft water. So make sure you know what comes out of your taps, because knowing hard water or soft water dictates the base nutrients that you're going to be using for your grow. Now that you know the difference between hard and soft water, we're going to go behind the desk and do some experiments just to show the difference. And if you're not using the correct base nutrients, what can go wrong? Also, we're going to head over to Barry Builds, who's installing a reverse osmosis machine. Okay, so we've got the basics of hard and soft water, but it's a little bit more complicated than that. With rainwater becomes bacteria, and with the water treatment facilities, they add chlorine to the water to get rid of any nasties in there so you're drinking safe tap water. The problem is for growers, a lot of you use beneficial bacteria. So the chlorine is going to affect them massively. And essentially, the way I like to say it is, you'd be driving an F1 car with part-worn Ford tyres. So we don't want to do that. If you want to get rid of the chlorine, then we need to use an RO machine that will effectively remove all the chlorine, sediments, and any bits of crap that are in your water that you don't want to give to your plants. We're also going to look at something called a catalytic carbon filter. There's a thing called chloramines, which is chlorine and ammonia added together. The water companies have done this because it's cheaper, and because when chlorine reacts with organics, it produces bodies of particles that aren't great for us to drink. So it's quite complicated, but we're going to talk more, and we're going to see Barry, who's installing the RO filter. So we're back with Barry Builds. How are we, Barry?
Not bad, mate. I'm not bad.
Good. Now, with water purification systems like the hydrologic behind us, people can think it's a little bit complicated to set up. And it's easy, isn't it?
It's easy, mate. Easy.
I actually gave it to Barry last week and said, Barry, how on earth are we setting this up? He takes it apart, and it took about 5 minutes to put together, didn't it?
You don't even need instructions with the likes of this, mate. It's that easy. Everything's colour-coded, all your pipes, like your drain in and your drain out, and your mains in. It's simple, mate, you know what I mean? All it is 2 fixings into the wall, which you can see there, and you're away, you know what I mean? It's that simple. I thought you were bringing me in to build, mate.
I know. I thought I'd test you a little bit, start you off slow.
That's insulting me, mate. That's not testing me.
I know you haven't built much for a while, so that's it. It's literally that easy. And the same with the RO machine. Just the 2 brackets on the back there.
2 fixings and it slides on.
And slides on. Simple as. And it doesn't get much more complicated, does it? So Barry, we're going to start with the RO machine. Where do all the pipes go? Let's Barry crack on with the pipes.
Basically, you've got your mains, haven't you? Which is a lot thicker than the other one, so that's going to go onto your mains tap. Don't cross-thread it, Barry.
So as Barry's putting on this white cable, this is your tap water, and this white cable goes into the bottom, just below the pressure gauge there.
What's good about it is it's all a push fit. That's like most new plumbing is like that. The copper pipes and that are going to be a thing of the past soon, except for with gas and stuff like that. But obviously,
So you don't need
no
to jubilee
fixings. Literally, it is just push fit. The only one thing that you've got to follow is, as you can see there, it's got the black pipe and the blue pipe. The black is your waste, and the blue is
your clean water.
What you're going to do, your reverse osmosis. So if you can see on this side here, it's actually colour coded. So if you do it wrong, there's something wrong with you. And it's also on these two pipes now, they have a flow arrow, so you know now the water's flowing that way. So it's that end first.
Okay.
And it's literally this easy thing. That's it, look.
And that's secure now.
To take it back out and move it, all you do is hold that clip in.
Yeah.
And it'll pull back out. But if you try and pull it, it won't. Okay. You've got to literally push the clip in. And it's that easy. This one's the same, it has a flow rate, so which is flowing that way, the flow arrow. So, and that's it, Steve. We're good to go.
We're good to go?
That's your waste.
Okay. So you hold the wastewater, Barry, and I'll get the clean water.
Are you ready?
Let's go.
And that's how easy it is.
That's pretty quick, isn't it? So it's filling, it's now clearing all of the sediment from it, your heavy metals. It's now going through the pre-carbon, which is removing the chlorine, and then the black tube at the top is your RO. That's now passing the water under pressure through a semi-permeable membrane, which is removing the dirty water, and the clean water should come out any second. Right, so we've managed to get rid of the excess crap water. And if you can look at the water compared to the RO water, you can literally see the difference in colour on the white background. It's real bad. Yeah, taste that. That's the clean water. Taste it.
You first. But that's got nothing at all in it, as it's the
really strange taste on that, because it's got no minerals in it, so it's got no taste. It's the minerals that give you a taste. So what you would do is you'd re-add your minerals back into that if you were using that as drinking water. Just
weird, isn't it?
Strange.
Yeah.
And then
taste that one.
No, that's for you.
Nah, I'm not drinking that, mate.
Dirty water. Okay. So, dirty water, reverse osmosis water. The reason that we want reverse osmosis is because we start from scratch. We start with nothing. Dirty water is reading 1.3 there because it's flashing between 1.2 and 1.4, and it seems to have settled on 1.2. That's out the tap in Liverpool when it normally comes out at 0.2. We put it into the reverse osmosis water. It won't read a thing.
Why is that, Steve? Because there's no salt or nothing in it.
It's the salts in the water that conduct electricity.
So we're just back to doing everything ourselves now, and we know what's going in the water, don't we?
Nothing in there at all. So, that's why when you get a hydrologic machine, they give you CalMag. So when you've got reverse osmosis, you're going to add CalMag to get the background DC to 0.2, and then we're starting from fresh.
And then we put our nutrients in.
And then we put our nutrients in. So, growers in the south, hard water nutrients, it should really be a thing of the past. Did you know that the US hasn't used hard water nutrients for decades?
I've heard about this, yeah.
They're all
RO, aren't they?
Because they all want to start from scratch. I'd put it like
to be honest, mate, I don't blame them after looking at that.
Would you drink it?
Would you drink it?
I wouldn't drink it.
So why would you give it to your plants?
Exactly, bro. So
that is bad, that.
Listen, I think that's a bit of a wake-up call for a lot of people.
Yeah, I'd have one of them fitted in my kitchen.
You could do. And then just add the minerals back into it. So that's the RO machine, and that's the sediment filter. The sediment filter is just as easy to set up. Your water goes in there, and the clean water comes out there. There's
when
no
you say
waste
sediment then, so
heavy metals, things like iron, chlorine, this will get rid of. Your chloramines, you need the extra filter on top, which you can buy at an additional cost. But this is basically just stripping the water of everything other than the calcium and magnesium and the fine elements. This doesn't affect your RO. No. This doesn't affect your EC, I should say, because it's not RO. This is RO. And again, if you want to move chloramines, then you need to get the additional filter to go with it. So, right, let's get behind the counter, because we need to, now that we've got really clean water, we're going to go behind the counter and look at what happens when you've got hard water compared to RO water and the things you need to do as a grower. You ready? Right, before Barry gets back, we're going to talk a little bit about pH. It's all about the science, and Barry doesn't like any of this science. The pH is really important for your plants, because if you don't get it in the right zone, between 5.5 and 6.3, your plant can't uptake nutrients. But there's some top tips you need to remember when you're using pH down. So you've got your water butt, this is a small water butt, and you've got your pH down, phosphoric acid. What a lot of you probably don't use is pH down grow. So this is nitric acid. So when it, as well as lowering the pH, it gives nitrogen. As well as lowering the pH with this phosphoric acid, it also gives phosphorus. So we use this in veg and this in bloom. Be very careful when handling pH down. And what you want to do is dose slowly. So use a pipette, so you can do accurate dosing, and just 1, 2, 3 drops at a time. Give it a stir, and then you're going to want to measure the pH. You don't want to rush this though, because measuring pH isn't a fast process. You put your pH pen in and let it stand there for a couple of minutes to get the accurate pH. If it's not where you need it to be, 1, 2 more drops, stir it, and look at your pH again. If you go too far with your pH, and too far is probably anything below 4.8, a lot of people will probably try and add pH up to correct, but it's a bad move. What you want to do is get rid of the water, start again, and crack on, because pH down and pH up, mixing with all your nutrients, isn't going to give the plants the best. So remember, nitric acid in grow and phosphoric acid in bloom, and dose slowly, take your time, and everything's going to be all right. I think Barry will be back soon. Let's crack on with some Barry work.
What's going on?
Where have you been?
Away from you talking science, fixing stuff. Red-blooded males do.
Fixing doors?
Yeah.
Listen, back to the growing. Pass my RO. The clean one.
The clean one.
Pass my Evian.
What is it? Evian?
That's
Bottled water?
Evian. Bottled water. And then the 1.2 EC dirty water. Horrible. So what we're going to look at here is the top tip for soft water and hard water growers. Hard water nutrients have extra acid in them.
Yeah, you nearly never got that right.
I nearly didn't get it out.
Slipping.
So because of that, because it's harder to drop the pH, whereas with soft water nutrients, there's less acid in this, because it doesn't have to, soft water, the pH can move about a lot, and that's what we're going to demonstrate. But also hard water's got less calcium and magnesium in it, because of the calcium and magnesium in the tap water, which is, this is effectively going to be our hard water. So what have we got under the counter? You can be my beautiful assistant. Standing. Pass that jug over there. I've already put some pH down from before. So that's phosphoric acid. And I need my pH pen, calibrated. And I think that will do us. So we also need to measure out the same amount. So that cylinder. And then we've got our 100 ml of dirty water, came out the black pipe. Okay, so that's over there. So what we're going to do is we're going to add 1 drop of pH down to that, 1 drop to that, 1 drop to that. I'm going to give it a little mix with another pipette. Thank you very much, beautiful assistant, who couldn't make it, so Barry stood in. Stir them up. And then we're going to measure the pH. Barry, always remember to take the cap off when you do your pH. Super science tip. Pre-calibrated. So, if we look at the pH of this water, so that's saying 6.3 pH of that water with 1 drop of pH down.
And that's our wastewater out of the RO.
That's our wastewater. And it's moving to about 6.2. If we then check the Evian water, now this is going to have a different starting pH, so we're just going to see what that. But it's settled on 6.3 as well. Give it a little stir. That's a good demonstration. There you go.
What is it?
And 3.3 when I just looked. 2.9. That just proves everything. So what that means is the point of adding calcium and magnesium back into your water is because calcium acts like a buffer. So when we add the pH down, the calcium will buffer it from going too low, which is why that was on 6.3, and there's calcium in that, and it didn't go too far down either. But this, with no buffering capacity whatsoever, and 1 drop of pH down, went down to 2.7. So it's the top tip for using RO. You have to add background calcium and magnesium to 0.2, so your EC, your pH, you should say, doesn't fluctuate upwards or downwards. And you're gonna have a lot of problems if you don't do that. Same for soft water, people. You should really add a little bit of calcium magnesium if your water's really soft out the tap. Otherwise, you can have real big fluctuations in your pH up and down.
It just sounds like too much science to me. Is there anything else I can do? Fix? Build?
Listen, I think the science has proven itself. Barry,
I'm off.
see you in a bit. I think we need to look at dissolved oxygen and water temperatures. Barry's already set it up and built it, so I get to talk about the science. Barry, where you going? So one of the aspects that you've really got to consider when aiming for top quality water is your water temperature. And it's linked to dissolved oxygen, but we're going to look at dissolved oxygen in a minute. Now, temperature is linked to dissolved oxygen because the lower the temperature, the amount of dissolved oxygen in your water really increases. The higher the temperature, the amount of dissolved oxygen decreases. So in the summer, how are you going to get your water temperatures down? We use the Halia water chiller. This is the HC150A, and it's perfect for something like a 225 to a 400 litre water butt. So let's have a quick look at it and see how it works. We have a pump inside this 400 litre water butt that will pump into the water chiller and back out and recirculates the water in the reservoir. Now, depending on how warm your room is, how warm the water already is, dictates how quickly the water chiller is going to be able to cool the water. But things that you've got to consider: what water chiller you buy, you need to match up with the correct pump. And top tip, they don't come with pumps or with piping. So make sure you get yourself separate piping and a pump that's adequate enough to pump through it. If it's too slow, then it's not going to chill it quickly enough. If it's too fast, it's also going to take ages to chill because the water hasn't got enough contact time with the refrigerant in the water chiller. So that's it. These are great pieces of kit. The dissolved oxygen will increase as your temperatures come down. I'd set mine to about 18 degrees Celsius, and Bob's your uncle. It's a really simple piece of kit to use. Lastly, where you place your water chiller is also very important. One of the hardest things to do is keep your room temperature down, and the way this gets rid of its heat is through the back vent. So if possible, try and have your water chiller outside your room. If that's not possible, have some fans directed at the back, pushing it up towards your extraction. And that's pretty much your water chillers. There's lots of models, lots of makes, but I put my trust in the Halia, very reliable piece of kit. You can probably tell from the water chiller that it's been around for a while and it's still working. So let's see if it chills. So if none of that made sense though, Garden Culture magazine, it's got everything you need. And yours truly wrote the article all about water. So grab this in store or online and you'll be able to find out exactly what we've been talking about in your own time. Right, there's so many aspects to having good quality water. We've just looked at how you're going to reduce your water temperatures using a water chiller, but it's really linked. Having cool water is also linked to dissolved oxygen. But how are you getting the oxygen increasing in your water? There's a few methods. I've got a bucket of water and my trusty Halia V60 air pump. It's seen better days this, but it's still going, and a very reliable, trusty piece of kit. So what we'll do, we'll go first with the big air stone. Cheap, works really well though. Just a piece of 4mm line off the V60 into the water, and as you can see, really good oxygenation of water. These are brilliant for reservoirs that will be used for flood and drain. So when you're constantly flooding and draining, the nature of flood and drain pulls oxygen into the pots. But having this in the reservoir during flowering, especially when it's constantly flooding and draining, it's going to make sure that you've got the highest amount of dissolved oxygen that you can possibly get. That's great for the bigger tanks, but for the smaller tanks, you want a smaller air stone. Again, exactly the same, but you can see the power there. Now the V60, because on the V60, I'll show you, I've actually closed off 4 of those and 6. I've closed off 6 of the pipes because we're only using 4 air stones. So there's a lot of power going through to the 4 air stones and air balls there. So the power out of this is a little bit higher than you'd want, but just shows what you can achieve with these type of air stones. Next, we have the golf ball. Really cheap. You can pick them up for £1, £2. These are brilliant just for really small usage. You can throw them into small buckets. It'll help mix your water. And that's working powerful. So they're your porous stones and your porous balls. But there's a special piece of kit. As you'll have noticed, the bubbles there can be quite violent. And in DWC, when the roots are hanging down into the water, you don't want that violence because the oxygen and the bubbles coming up through roots can really disturb, can potentially hurt the tender roots. You're not going to get these fine roots. They're really important. So we use air curtain. Plop that in the water, turn her on. And what you can see there, it's just a really timid bubbles, really nice. The roots love them. They're not damaging the fine hairs. And in DWC buckets, we line these up. You can probably get between 6 to 12 in some of the big reservoirs. And they're really ideal. They don't block. Sometimes people use porous pipe, but porous pipe can get blocked. These, when you finish with them, give them a good wipe off, and they're good to go again. And cheap as well. Pick this size up for about £1.50. So great piece of kit. That's the dissolved oxygen. That's me bucket of water. Some top tips though for when you're using them. If you've got something like an autopot system and you've got a big reservoir, then I wouldn't be using a stone at the bottom to increase your oxygen, because what you're doing is this thing is sucking in a large amount of air and pushing it into the water. And when you've got nutrients, it's going to alter the pH as well. So you're going to be constantly adjusting. So there's no need to use one if you're in an autopot system and that type of reservoir. What I would do is I would buy a water mover. And what this is going to do is keep the nutrients circulated and means that everything is of even consistency when it goes into the autopots. About consistency, we need to look at EC, electrical conductivity, and how consistent you need to be when feeding your plants. So we're going to head up into the lab and see what I'm feeding my plants. So EC, electrical conductivity. It's similar to pH, and that's important for the uptake of nutrients, but it's about the concentration of your nutrients. You know what we'll do? We'll do the EC here rather than up in the lab, because everything's already set up. So first things first for EC meter. We like the EC trunction from Blue Lab because you can stir the nutrients and it's giving you a reading. So this is a fresh batch of water. It's reading 0.3 at the moment because it's flashing between 0.2 and 0.4, which tells us it's at 0.3. So I'm about to start growing some plants in here. We need to up the EC a little bit so that it's baby food for the plants. We're going to aim for an EC of around 0.6 to 0.8, which is great, and it's ideal for young plants. As they get older, teenagers, you want to increase the feed to about 1.2, 1.5, and as they mature into adulthood, week 5 of flower tends to be the heaviest period of feeding. You're taking up to 2, 2.2, and if you're growing something like tomatoes, you take it right up, the big heavy feeders. So, some of the nutrients. If you were using something like canna, I'm going to be doing flood and drain in pebbles. So you'd use Aquavega A and B, good quality nutrients. If you're using Dutch Pro, beyond the original Grow, Hydro A and B, another good soft water for Liverpool, A and B nutrients. There's the Hydro Base from Buddha's Tree, very good in cocoa, but also very good in hydro systems, and the Organicus if you're in soil. But what we've got here, we use this a lot in the shop because it's Mills A and B. It's good in soil, cocoa and hydro. So it's just one base feed for everything. Really easy to use as well. So you'll notice I've measured out 80 ml of the A. And give that a stir. and 80ml of the B. It's a 400 litre tank, so 40ml of A and 40ml of B is 1ml per litre. I've added 80ml of A and 80ml of B, which is 2ml per litre. If we check the EC now, it's at 0.5. Now for a first feed, I'll probably leave it right there. We're in the middle of the summer, it's really hot, and when it's hot, you want to keep your EC a little bit lower than you would traditionally during the cooler months. If you're watching this and it is during the winter, you can actually afford to have the EC a little bit higher. So if your grow room temperature is lower than you'd like it to be, up the EC. The plants drink less, so you want to make sure that they have the right amount of food. Keep the EC low when the plants are young. You bring the EC up to around 0.8 to 1.5 when they're in their teenage years. That's late veg. And then as they mature into flower and become adults, you can take them up to 2.2. Now, a key point is that, like your grandparents, plants also like to eat less as they get older. So when you're at 2.2 in week 5, then you slowly start bringing the EC back down to 1.5, 1, and eventually flush. You'll notice your plants do start to drink and eat a little bit less as they get older. So that's EC done. I think Barry is upstairs waiting for me. He hasn't built something in over an hour, so we're going to head upstairs and go and see Barry and finish the episode. Wasn't so bad, that, was it?
Wasn't, mate.
Yeah, did you enjoy today?
It was alright.
Good. Do you know loads about water now?
You already knew loads about water, mate.
You just choose not to do it as often?
I just choose not to do it as often as you.
What's your top tip then for water?
In what way? ROI, pH, EC and all that?
Yeah, everything we've talked about today, what is your top tip?
None of it. Don't forget to water them.
Oh, that was scientific and advanced,
I'll
wasn't it?
leave that to you, though, eh?
Don't forget to water.
I'm really bored of all that scientific stuff.
Groundbreaking top tip.
Yeah, well, you can do your pH and your EC, but if you don't feed it to them, what good's it?
It's true. My top tip is with pH. I see a lot of people, when they're pHing, use pH down, set it at something like 5.5 if you're in hydro, and if it goes down to 5.2 when you're doing your mix, don't start adding loads of pH up in. 5.2 is not that bad. If it's at 3.8, then you've got a problem, but you still don't want to be adding pH up in. Just get rid of everything you've done and start again. pH up is for super niche uses, and I just don't like selling it, to be honest. It causes people to be lazy.
I don't like the people who put pH down and pH up, then pH down and pH up. Once you've done that, fresh tank.
Yeah, don't come into the shop because Barry doesn't like you.
No, stay well away.
Next week we are episode 4 on the quality water part 2, but we look at hardware. This is your type of stuff.
That's me.
We're looking at the EC
Can I get my tools now?
If you must. Go and get your tools, and we'll see you next week, Friday, 6 o'clock.
Can I take these mics off and everything now? This is boring me, this. I need me drill. Who's got a hammer?